Smallpox Bioterrorism on the Pacific Northwest, a collaborative research project I'm working on with Professor John Lutz. Smallpox is largely acknowledged as the greatest killer in human history. And while much of that history of smallpox remains unexamined, we do know that the massive depopulation of indigenous communities following smallpox epidemics was exploited by successive American and Canadian societies to facilitate settler colonialism. But European explorers, traders, and eventually settlers didn't necessarily need to unleash smallpox in order to achieve their ambitions. They could bluff it. For comparative purposes, consider the impact of lynching in the American South. Research reveals that lynchings only needed to happen rarely in order to spread terror and coerce Black populations into submission. The relatively regular burning of a cross was sufficiently terrorizing to impose white supremacist agendas on marginalized Black populations and to sustain the asymmetrical power relations upon which Southern US whites depended. Thereafter, white people, regardless of whether they themselves had participated in a lynching or cross burning, had enhanced opportunities and freedoms vis-a-vis all Blacks. The same is true in the history of threatened smallpox bioterrorism on the Pacific Northwest. A massive epidemic swept through this region in 1782. It was not introduced on purpose, but rather spread northward from a Spanish garrison in Mexico via indigenous trade networks. It devastated indigenous communities, killing between 60 and 90% of the population in a mere 3 weeks. Indigenous people were understandably terrified of smallpox, and white traders and explorers knew this. Over the following 6 decades, 4 additional smallpox epidemics swept the region. Our research has documented that within this period, there were in fact 7 or 8 cases where smallpox was bluffed to be threatened onto indigenous people, sometimes to intimidate them so that they wouldn't attack white people, sometimes to extort property and furs, sometimes to ensure that people would be compliant as workers, and other times explicitly to exploit land and resources. Thank you.